All right, here we are. What up, Uncle Pete? Oop, get that out. What's up, man? Uncle Pete. Yeah. So you feel like what do you say? I feel like a kid who studied really hard for a test and he knows he's going to kick ass. Nice. I like that. I love that. I love it when I can meet other people who can get as nerdy as I can get about horror films. It feels good. It feels like a kindred spirit, you know. How am I doing? I'm doing pretty well, all things considered. Kind of like staying in the house a lot has some ups and downs, but mainly okay. What about you? Also, I don't have questions for this one. I feel prepared enough that I can come up with questions on the fly, but I feel like mostly I want to just rely on all of you in the chat to come up with stuff because I know at least I know you're writing things down, taking notes. I'm sure you have things to point out and questions to ask, so and then I can just throw some on top. Yep, hanging like the rest of us. Yep. Yep, hanging in there. I think my buddy Rich might be showing up because I had told him about this film prior to announcing that we were doing The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and he went and checked it out, and then he was texting me about it like right after he finished it. Actually, I think he was texting me a little bit during the film. What a movie, though. I started slow but stuck with it based on your recommendation, which was a high one. Yeah, and I kind of felt the same way when I was going into that film of like, I hope we're going somewhere with this because it does start. It's very slow. It's awkward. That's the other thing is like they're talking weird. The people's attitudes are weird. It's just like you don't know what to think at first. But I try not to quit on films unless they're just like I can tell for sure they're not going to go anywhere. And I think that there's like I don't know a prime example of a film that a lot of people quit on and quit on way too early, but I stuck with it and it really paid off. It was the film Gerald's Game on Netflix, so I'd recommend that. I mean, I don't know, maybe you've seen it, but it pulled you in. Good, I'm glad it pulled you in. It takes a little bit with the film to actually like get to that point where you're just like, oh, now I feel invested. The emotionless dialogue from everyone. I was asking myself, where is this going? I know. Yeah, me too. I felt exactly the same way. I was like, what? I felt like with all that emotionless dialogue, like my initial reaction was, this is terrible writing because these are like cardboard characters. They're just so one dimensional and they're all the same. But then when I started to understand it was all part of the larger story, then I was like, oh, sweet. I can get down with that. Why would you talk like that? This is what I was saying to myself. I know. Yeah, I was feeling exactly the same way and saying the same things to myself. Who has hair under their arms? Yeah, that's a Marshall. First of all, welcome, Marshall. How's it going? That is a very weird line of dialogue from this film. Probably one of the weirdest ones. Do you have COVID? Now that's gaming. No, I don't. Do you? I know percentage wise, there are way more people who don't have it than have it, thankfully. But yeah, Marshall, to your point, dialogue pretty odd, pretty odd. Who would tell a kid that your daughter started her period, then she was just saying it as if it was normal to say? Yeah, now, that's to me that was just kind of like how the family was. Like they were all very much the same type of person, and I think it all rolled downhill from Steve, the father, is like he was that way. He was just very like clinical about things, which I think it was supposed to be like his job crossing over into his personal life, because doctors are very much a lot of times kind of have to be detached from emotion because they deal with so much, and it can just be exhausting. So I think that was kind of showing that he was taking it home and employing that same approach to things at home, and therefore that's the environment he set up for his family members. So everyone just acted that way, and that's how he raised his kids, is to talk like that and be pretty much emotionless. Who would On the bright side, I didn't fall asleep during the film. That's good, Blue Room. I don't know if that means that you didn't like it. I hope you liked it, at least to some degree. I know you put a comment on my review that went up today that was very interesting, that you should bring up and we should talk about at some point. Marshall, the opening scene with the heart was eye-opening, set the tone from the start. And I agree, and I think that's a very jarring, visceral way to start the film, but it's also a jarring, visceral way to start to give the idea of what the main character does for a living, and also people knowing that like he's dealing with carnage like every day pretty much, which I think maybe kind of plays to a little bit of the desensitization of his character. I don't know. Everyone spoke the same way, no emotion at all. Even the anesthesiologist was deadpan emotion. Yeah, and I think it may have been done that way in order to make it noticeable when the more slight changes were happening with mindset, with emotion, because if you notice, like we're talking about, like there's no emotion in the very beginning of the film, but by the time we get to the end, there's actual emotion that's been shown. And it's because of the ordeal that everyone goes through in the film. I'm trying to move this so maybe it's not reflecting as much. Yeah, I don't know. I might still just end up getting it. Alright. Sorry. I'm wearing glasses this time because I was finding it hard to just like stay on top of the comments, because I would feel like I'd have to get super close to it, but one of the best scenes I've heard in a while. It matched so well with the cinematography. What was that? The Uncle Pete, you're talking about which one? With the anesthesiologist being deadpan? The journey is just important as the destination. After the first 5 minutes of dialogue, I realized this was going to be a long, long, long journey. Yes. Yeah, that was one of your great quotes, great things that you put on the comments for my video, Blue Room. Totally right. I mean, this film is all about the journey, and you have to immerse yourself in the journey, the audience, and obviously the characters, and that's how they're going to get to the end state of being something else. Like, I felt like they started as not a tight unit. I mean, they were a family, but it seems like they were just a family by biology and not a family by emotions, because everyone was pretty much emotionless. But when they went through everything that they went through with Marty and all those events, then it turned into a situation where they started understanding that they actually had some sort of feelings for each other. They were actually like forced to deal with more in-depth emotions and come to grips with the idea that they could lose someone, and this kind of goes to like taking people for granted, and then eventually like they're showing emotion by the end. So yeah, it's totally all about the journey, and that's how they get to being actually a better family, which I would honestly argue that as horrible as all the events were, as a unit, the family was better in the end, which is something that Marty actually says in the film, is that everything will be better if you just go with it, basically. The scene where Steven stuffs the donut into Ben's mouth made me laugh, and I felt bad. Yeah, Marshall, that was kind of a weird thing, but it also kind of shows the family dynamic and how it's not good. And obviously, in the end, it's significantly better. Now, where do they go from there after the end of the film? Who knows? I mean, I feel like you could do a sequel, especially because how does the family explain that their child is just missing now? Also, how does Steven explain that there were gunshots coming from his house? Because I'm sure someone heard those. Because his doing his like spinning around and shooting thing, not very precise, and it's a lot of noise you're making. I do not care one iota about the characters. It was if the characters, were following some type of cosmic script that they could not deviate from. That's what Blue Room said. So Blue Room, I could see that, and like Uncle Pete and I were talking about, like it bothered both of us a lot in the very beginning because you're just like you can't connect to these people. You really can't. So it's more of like you're just witnessing these events happen and you're looking at it from a more emotionless standpoint because usually with these films you feel invested. Like they take the time to create characters that feel real to you and you feel like you're somewhat invested in. You can have some sort of emotional or intellectual attachment to. And then with this, you don't have that. So it's more, it seems like with that kind of atmosphere, you're forced to be more of an objective observer as opposed to feeling invested in what's actually going on. So you can kind of pay more attention to all the sides involved as opposed to being like, oh, I feel like this person's clearly right and I want them to come out on top. That's just one of my thoughts on it. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's how it played to me. I guess the Now That's Gaming internet troll. Just a guess. Yeah, because he's not even here anymore. Just one of those people that pops in, says dumb stuff, and takes off. Whatever. Can deal with that. Easy. Yeah, so, okay, so overall, let's talk about the technical aspect of this film. I mean, how did everyone feel about? I know we all feel pretty much the same way about the actual like dialogue and the script and the character creation. Is that there's no emotion? It's weird. It's very odd, but I feel like that was intentional. But from a technical standpoint, like cinematography wise, directing wise, like what did you guys think? Performances. What are your overall opinions, thoughts on it? Think anyone did better than another person? Some of them were terrible. Was anyone surprised to see Alicia Silverstone show up all of a sudden? I was not expecting that. I thought Bob was the nicest and most normal character. Too bad he would be the one to die for everyone else's sins. Marshall, yeah, that's a good point. I think of all these kind of emotionless characters, Bob did emerge as being the most sympathetic, as things went on. And I think part of it being he was the youngest. When people see a kid in a bad situation and especially knowing how dire the end state for this individual could end up being and does end up being, there's a natural affinity for a character like that. So that is a good point that he was the most normal in that sense, definitely. And I think for that reason, it makes it even more impactful for people that he's the one to actually go at the end. Like, that would cause more emotion as opposed to it being like the sister who seemed like she was in cahoots with Marty, and some people could have thought like, well, she got what was coming to her because she was dumb. Or Steven, or the wife, because they didn't seem like super clean characters. I mean, Bob seemed like actually a pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? A pretty untainted person. He didn't show emotion or anything, but that doesn't mean he was bad. I think the wife didn't get sick because Bob was in charge of watering the flowers. Uncle Pete. Refresh my memory. These were flowers that... what flowers? Were these flowers that were brought by Marty? Or they're flowers outside? That's why he got sick first. Could be. Gotcha, Uncle Pete, Marshall. I liked all the characters. I thought I was going to hate Bob, but he was a cool kid. Yeah. Like Marshall said, Uncle Pete, he ended up emerging as just like the most normal. And I think that's, with the cast of characters that are so emotionless, when one of them legitimately like shows emotion, then you're just like, I'm going to attach to that real quick, I did want more of Alicia Silverstone. Yeah, and that's a good point. Is she did a good job for her role, Alicia Silverstone. The other thing is, I thought for sure she would come back. I didn't think it was like a one scene type character. I think she definitely should have been in there more. It did seem weird that she was just kind of dropped, but I guess they got what they needed out of her. They just kind of needed to show that she actually had an interest and it wasn't just Marty making things up. The cinematic portion was good. I found all the wide angle shots well done. Yeah, Blue Room. I mean, I thought cinematography wise, it looked pretty stunning. I thought it was very smooth. They had a lot of really good smooth camera movements that kept the shots interesting, in my opinion. And then I talked about it in my review video. They did it twice with Anna, with Nicole Kidman's character Anna. She would be behind glass, and there were shadows of leaves over her face, and pretty much from like her chest up. And I feel like that has some sort of symbolic importance, but I couldn't figure that out. Although now that Uncle Pete says something about the flowers, maybe that it's kind of a tie-in to, showing that the flowers had something to do with it. I don't know. Bob was Marshall's favorite character. Cool. I think Marty was my favorite character, as messed up as that sounds, because he was the most interesting, at least early on. Marty brought the keychains and flowers. Okay, yeah, so Uncle Pete. So I do think maybe there was something going on with the flowers and the keychains. Well, maybe the flowers, maybe not the flowers, but definitely when I finished the film, I thought back and I was like, where would they have gotten sick from if this is a situation where, Marty made them sick somehow? Where would that come from? And I was like, they really did focus the camera on each of those keychains when Marty met the kids, and they made a very big point of like showing them up close. So I felt like that was important somehow. So I feel like maybe he, put something on them that when they touched them and, maybe they got it on their face or it went through their skin, like that started affecting them. But, there might be something to the flowers as well. And the fact that Bob took care of the flowers so Anna didn't end up getting it would make sense, because then it would say that Marty showed up intending to give, like, I don't know, like laced items to all three of the family members, and not Steve, obviously, because he wanted Steve to be his new father. Uncle Pete, I don't understand the flower Bob reference. Blue Room. Yeah, Uncle Pete, actually, maybe you did answer it. Marty brought the keychain gifts and flowers for Anna. He could have poisoned them all in an attempt to get each one sick. Yeah, definitely Uncle Pete. I think that's a definite possibility. Anna told Bob he was to water the flowers, and Kim walked the dog. Kim, that was the daughter's name. I always forget her name in this. So Anna never came into contact with the flowers. Okay, good point, Uncle Pete. Good point. There's another thing to consider about what happened, and that is that it was potentially a supernatural thing. That it was kind of like this cosmic balancing the scales type thing, as Marty told it, and that Marty actually didn't have anything to do with it. That's what my buddy Rich actually said that he thought it was. I like the angle of thinking that Marty's actually involved with it. That's more interesting to me, but I feel like you could see it as being like a cosmic or religious thing of things being taken care of. Although Blue Room, you had something about looking up, I forget what that term was that you put, the Greek mythology thing. Put that in the chat, because that could play into it too. I thought that was interesting. The sex scenes can be correctly referred to as anesthetic sex. Blue Room. Yes, I definitely think you're correct about that. It's weird. I mean, hey, whatever you're into, I don't really care if someone's actually into that, as long as both people are into it, fine. But it's a weird thing to watch in a movie for sure. Anyone else find it weird that Kim laid on the bed almost in the same way her mom did for Steven. Oh, Uncle Pete, I didn't notice that, but now that you said it, I'm thinking back, and that makes sense. I mean, that speaks to how the family was all very similar. Like, and the kids very much were emulating what their parents were doing. That's a really good point. Ugh, that's like creepy. It's creepy too, though. The scene where Steven talks to the principal on which kid is better shows that he needs help deciding and is struggling to kill one of his kids. I agree, Marshall. I think in addition, it also shows that he didn't know his kids. That's another thing, that he was so emotionally detached and there was such a lack of actual relationship amongst the family members that he legitimately didn't know how his kids were as people. Because all he would do is come home, they would have dinner, they wouldn't talk about a whole lot, and he would just tell them things to do, like make sure you get your hair cut, take care of the flowers, this, that. The sex scenes were awkward. yeah, Marshall. Mm-hmm. Pretty awkward. If there is a connection between Flower's poison, how do you explain Kim being able to walk to the window to see Martin, then lose control of her legs afterwards? It's a good question. I'm not 100% sure. I'd probably have to rewatch it for that to answer that, Blue Room. But, and everyone else feel free to chime in with a potential answer to that. But when did Marty bring the lemonade? Because I feel like there was a tie to the lemonade. Because they made a big point of him saying when he was in the hospital, "Oh, I brought lemonade. Make sure you taste it and tell me what you think." I think he said his mom made it. So I felt like that was kind of a strong hint at something going on. But then maybe, again, that was kind of there as like a red herring to be like, maybe that's poison, but it wasn't. But, they don't answer these things, so... That's a good point, Carlin. He was out of touch with his kids' lives. Yeah, Marshall, like total. And it wasn't just he was out of touch with his kids' lives, but it really seemed like the kids were out of touch with their parents' lives, but they would, emulate certain things that they saw, like personality-wise. But also Anna, Anna seemed to be, cut off from everyone else. It just seemed like nobody was coming together, really. And actually, like, they didn't really even have any familial bonds. Uncle Pete, when Steven was deciding which kid to kill, and they both knew it, Bob cut his hair, and you could tell he was trying to win the vote, so to speak. I can't remember Kim doing the same. So, Uncle Pete, I think, to me, it seemed like what he was doing was trying to... I think he thought that he was going to die because Kim kept telling him that, basically. And she was like, you have to sacrifice yourself. Sorry, it's going to be you. So I think when he went and got his haircut and stuff like that, I think he was trying to make amends for not doing what his dad wanted him to so that he could feel good about their relationship before he died. Like, I think he actually kind of expected that he would die, and he just wanted to make sure that when he did, they would have a good relationship, and that would make him feel better about dying. Just a thought. Hey, Leon's Movie Corner. What up, man? Welcome to the discussion. We are talking about The Killing of a Sacred Deer by Yorgos Lanthimos. Agreed, Uncle Pete. Yep, Marshall. Marty brought the lemonade to the hospital for Kim. It could have had something in it like a temporary antidote. It was all part of his plan. That's possible. Well, and the other thing is they touch on it slightly, but Kim was involved. Like, there were some things said and done in the film where that Kim actually had been talking to Marty with all the extra time they were spending together about the plan, basically, about what was going to happen, what was going on and everything. And that's why she crawls when she can't walk. She crawls to the basement and is kind of pleading to him to, like, undo things, make things better, because she knows that he's in control. Yeah. but I feel like they don't get into like to what degree she was involved though. Leon's movie corner. Your noise. I don't know if I've seen Leon. Do you have a YouTube channel that you put stuff on? I'll check that out if that's the case. Blue Room. It wasn't that the father was out of touch. He was looking for someone else to make the tough decision of which to kill. This would relieve him of any guilt. You know what? I could Blue Room. I could definitely see that angle of it, but I also think that it works from the standpoint of, him just trying to gather information to make sure that he makes like the best decision. But I do think they're at least. I mean, maybe it is exactly what you said, Blue Room, but maybe it's also just a portion of him wanting to feel like he isn't making the decision, and that's a good point. Then you can kind of internalize it and say, well, someone else told me that this is what to do, so it's their fault, not my fault so much. But then also the aspect of him, employing the idea of making it random who dies by putting the bag on his head and spinning around and then just shooting, which is a terrible, can we all agree it was a terrible, terrible idea to do that? Because, you can end up just shooting and maiming someone and then they die very painfully and very slowly. The other aspect of, like I was talking about, there are a lot of gunshots happening. I'm sure they have neighbors of some sort. People would hear that, call the police. So for that reason, I actually think there are some plot holes with that. Because people would hear the gunshots and call the police. Also, how do you explain in the end your kid just disappeared? You gotta come up with something. Good point, Blue Room. Yep, Marshall, it was a good point. Leon's movie corner. What's your thoughts on Silence of the Lambs, 1991? I will. I don't want to get too far into Silence of the Lambs, but I will give you a kind of quick answer, and because then we're going to go back to the discussion about Killing of Sacred Deer. But I really like Silence of the Lambs. I think it's really good. I also liked Red Dragon, and I've watched the first season of the show Hannibal, and I want to keep going for seasons 2 and 3, and it's actually on Netflix now, which is pretty awesome. So I'm going to watch seasons 2 and 3. I'm a fan of Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, it's good. It's definitely good. Blue Room. As a case study of the styles during a college course, I would have approached this film differently. As a film for entertainment, it misses the mark. Right. Yeah. Okay. So I see what you're saying, Blue Room. But I think it also comes down to how do you like your entertainment for horror films? And I think this is where the horror community ends up getting divided a lot when people get into arguments of, I think this movie's awesome, I think this movie sucks. And when that happens, everyone just needs to realize that this is just, everyone has different tastes. Like, some people even like movies that are literally crap. Like, I know actually probably all of us like some really crappy movies. But for me personally, like, I think it's very entertaining to have a movie like this where I have to put in some work. But I also understand that some people don't really like that. Like, they want to just be like, look, I don't want to have to think too hard. I just want some cool, entertaining stuff on the screen. Please do that for me. So it's just, how do you want to make your film? It's Yorgos Lanthimos seems to, from what I understand, want to go down the path of trying to be very intellectual with a lot of his films, and also have a lot of subtext to it, a lot of metaphor to it, and then have people kind of draw some of their own conclusions about things, have some questions out there that keep the mind turning. And I actually love films like that, but I understand that not everyone does, so that, it's cool. What is the significance of the title of The Killing of a Sacred Deer? My idea on that, Blue Room, was that, actually, I'm going to have to read it, because I said it in my review, like, towards the end, and I can't remember exactly how I put it, but it was, and maybe this is a stretch, this is just something that I came up with after looking into it a little bit, but I looked up what a deer meant to Native American culture, and I can read it for you. Okay. In native culture, deer symbolize totems that represent sensitivity, intuition, and gentleness. Martin loses this with his father because since his father dies, his father was the source of sensitivity, intuition, and gentleness in his life. He's seeking that again from Stephen, even though Stephen doesn't really have it. But through the ordeal that Stephen and his family go through, he does have it in the end. And I also wrote down that Stephen gains this when he kills Bob, is what I think. Once again, that's just me kind of spitballing on what I potentially see in it. Who knows what Yorgos Lanthimos was thinking, but, just an idea. Heather, horror movies can be bad about leaving things where there can be more questions than answers. I've often wondered what would happen later on after the end we get. Yeah, I feel you on that, Heather, but at the same time, I also feel like sometimes I really like it when the film kind of lets you, just mentally wander after the fact and just start thinking about a lot of what ifs in addition to trying to kind of answer the questions that are left there on your own. So, I mean, I dig it, but I understand that, it can be frustrating too. What is the killing of a sacred deer about? Oh, you should just watch it, Leon. I mean, I don't want to tell you to leave the room, but heavy spoilers in this. It's really good. I mean, if you don't care about spoilers, then that's fine. Definitely hang out, but I would recommend you watching it. It's on Netflix right now. It's really good. Just to say what it's about, I think Heather put it really well last week when she teased it by saying a guy needs to make a very tough decision about his family. Something like that. I think Heather put it in a better, more eloquent way, but good point, Heather. The movie makes you think, and you may not get it while watching the movie, but thinking about it in the next day or so, you get it. Yeah, Uncle Pete, yeah. Well, and I think that Uncle Pete, ends up being kind of up to whoever's watching it. We all have different ways that we think. We all have different life experiences. We all live in different environments. We're brought up in different environments and have had different life situations and choices. So I think all of those things kind of come together to form the filter through which we not only experience life, but watch a movie and then interpret it. At around 1 hour and 35-minute mark of the film, the father talks to the principal about his children. The principal brings up that Kim is very good at literature and history. Yes. The principal says that she wrote a brilliant essay on the tragedy of Iphigenia. Iphigenia is found in Greek mythology. The TLDR version of the Greek mythology, Agamemnon offends the goddess Artemis on her way to the Trojan War by accidentally killing one of her sacred deer. Okay, so based off saying that, Blue Room, it seems like maybe that comes into play with it being more of like a supernatural type thing, where it's kind of like the balance has been upset, kind of like Marty talks about in it, and the world needs to right itself in a way, or maybe it's a religious, like, God type thing. I don't know. But that's really interesting. Thank you for bringing that into this, Blue Room. That's a really cool point that I had missed, honestly, when I watched it. Because sometimes when I'm taking notes, like, I'll miss a line or two here, and I happen to miss that. What's up, Rich? What's up, man? Not so much about the viewer not getting it, Pete. I mostly meant I hate to see how this character is going to explain everything to the police. Yeah, Heather. And you weren't in the room in the chat when I was talking about it, Heather, but that was one of the big plot holes in my opinion, which is like how are you going to explain not only the fact that your child is gone all of a sudden, but how are you going to explain all the gunshots that were heard coming from your house? Because I assume someone heard them. It's a solid movie. Yeah, Rich. I liked it more than solid, but just saying. Oh, sorry about that, Heather, but I see what you mean now. Yeah. Yeah, definitely crazy moments in the film, Rich. I mean, it's a weird film. It's a brilliant film. It's a unsettling film. It's a confusing film at times. It's very much all over the place. It makes you feel and experience a lot of things, much like the characters in the film. Okay, I will watch it and watch your next live stream. Have a good day and keep up the good work. Hey, I appreciate that, Leon. I really do appreciate that. And I'll have an announcement up for what we're going to do next. Marshall. Yeah, with the movie having unanswered questions, it goes with the quote, the conversation continues after the credits. Totally. Totally, Marshall. And to be honest, like, those are the films I live for, you know, and that's why I'm a big fan of films like Hereditary and Midsommar, when I know a lot of people don't like them, just because I can't, like, they stay with me after I watch them. And part of the reason is because they're confusing. They're not straightforward. You have to piece things together. Like, literally, a film like Hereditary has clues just littered throughout the film. And once you go back and you identify all the clues, you can put the puzzle together and understand what the full story is. Now, that's kind of how A24 does it as a studio with a lot of their horror films. And The Killing of a Sacred Deer is an A24 film. Midsommar, Hereditary, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, those are A24 films. And I really like that way of doing things. For a really good explanation, there is a 3-minute video on the YouTube channel Mythology and Fiction Explained. The story of Iphigenia and the Sacred Deer. I'll have to check that out, Blue Room. That sounds interesting. That might help me a little bit with figuring out its placement within this film. Rich, thanks for making you watch this film. Hey, you got it, man. Obviously part of the reason I do this YouTube channel is because when I find really good films, I want to be able to tell people about that. Also, I want to help add my ideas about what I think the context in the film is, subtext, analysis, metaphors, all that stuff, because, you know, maybe some people view it the same way. Also, to get information from other people on what movies should I also be watching. You know, what are you loving that you think I would love? Just add it to my list. I think it's worth a second watch so I may better understand it or to pick up on things I missed. I totally agree with that, Uncle Pete. I've been feeling like watching it again. I need to check out Dogtooth and maybe The Lobster. Yeah, so I am going to be watching Dogtooth, taking notes on it, and doing a full review for that one. And I will be watching The Lobster, but I don't think The Lobster is horror, so I don't think I'll do a review of that for the channel. I'm just going to watch it for my own satisfaction, because I feel like I might be all in on Yorgos Lanthimos as a director, to be honest. He also did the movie The Favorite, which was an Academy Award nominee. I think it was nominated for Best Picture, too. Yeah, definitely deserves a rewatch, Rich. If the goal was some type of cosmic justice, then none was given. Where can we find justice for Bob? Does the cycle of revenge continue? So Blue Room, to answer that, I would say that the cosmic justice aspect of it isn't necessarily moral or ethical, but more of a scales balanced type thing, like an eye for an eye type deal. I'm just talking from that standpoint. Which I think Marty talks about the whole situation kind of like that. But correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yes, I mean, the cycle could continue on revenge. And if people, you know, to that point about the cycle of revenge continuing and, you know, not justice not actually being served, if people on here, you haven't seen Chan-wook Park's Revenge trilogy, Old Boy, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and Lady Vengeance, those films are a great representation of films that give the point of, here are people who sought revenge, got revenge, and it did nothing for them. Because, I mean, we love revenge in films because it makes us feel good. You know, we see something terrible happen to someone, and then they get back at these people. Like, prime example, the John Wick films. People love John Wick because his dog gets killed, and then he exacts revenge against everyone involved with that, or even close to it. But Chan-wook Park takes it from a different perspective, which I think is more true to real life. I think the way we see revenge in films is very fictional. Uh, Watching the movie was a interesting experience, but it was too pretentious and fancy to me. Blumhouse is greater than A24. A24 is always for you. Okay, Marshall. I can. Hey, I can appreciate that. I like. I don't know that I've seen a ton of Blumhouse stuff, but I like some of the Blumhouse stuff I have seen. I like some. I don't like some of it that I've seen, like the Truth or Dare. I thought was terrible, but did Blumhouse did Upgrade, right? That was a gem, like a very underappreciated film. I thought that was actually pretty solid. Obviously, Get Out and Us. I put the link on your movie review. Oh, thank you, Blue Room. I appreciate that. Check that out for sure. Oh, and going back to Marshall's comment about A20 Blumhouse better than A24, I would say the opposite. I'm very much nerding out about these A24 films. If that is the case, an eye for an eye, Bob was just as innocent as Martin's father, and so it goes. Yeah, yeah, I can see. Yeah, I mean, you're right, Blue Room, and I think that would be in kind of an argument for the cycle then just continuing, and it, just being a circle that just keeps going and going and going with revenge. Oh, okay, yeah, Marshall, yes, Blumhouse did do Upgrade. That's right. Yeah, I didn't have any expectations going into Upgrade, and I dug it. They pulled off a lot of great stuff for how low budget it was. I'm always left wondering what's next for the Murphy family. Yes. Yeah, Rich. I think in the very end, it indicates that the family is actually like a cohesive family then because of everything they went through. Now emotional bonds have actually been formed that weren't there before. So they're going to function more as an actual family that appreciates and loves one another. It's messed up, like very messed up that that's the case, but I think that's the point that Lanthimos was trying to make here. It's weird, but I think that's what he was trying to say. Some of the scenes were out of place for me and felt like they were just there to disturb and not progress the story. Like when the wife gives a service to the guy in the car, or when Steven is in the shower and walking around naked. A lot of what the fuck moments. Yeah. Um yeah, Marshall, I could see that. I think that they were probably there for a specific reason, but one of the problems with, moments like that in the film is you'd have to kind of be inside the mind of the director-writer, Yorgos Lanthimos. And who knows what he was really thinking. I think he had them there for a very specific reason, and I wonder if you got the Blu-ray, if there'd be a good commentary track with Lanthimos, and maybe he answers some of that. That's what commentary tracks are very good for, and I don't watch them enough. I should. I might have to buy this movie just to see what the commentary's like. So the question the movie poses, would you kill someone in your family so everyone else can live? Okay. Good question, Heather. I'm glad I don't have to actually answer that, like, realistically. Um, I don't know. I just feel like hypothetical questions like that, sometimes I can answer them. I don't know that I can actually answer that, though. Because I think it's one of those things that, like, you have to be in the situation to actually know how you're going to act, or how you're going to react, or what decision you're going to make. Because I know that people will say about things all the time, like, here's a hypothetical question, and you always answer in an ideal for you manner. But that doesn't mean that that's how you would make a decision or react at that time. A lot of those moments, Marshall, I agree that's one of the questions on the movie. Yeah. Heather, yes, but I would have a lot of suicidal thoughts afterwards, Marshall. Yeah, Marshall. Yeah. I mean, like, doing something like that. And, that's a good point, is when you're forced to do something terrible, or you decide to do something terrible, or a snap judgment makes you do something terrible, there are effects. There's something that lingers afterwards. It's not without consequence. And going back to what I was talking about, Chan-wook Park's Revenge trilogy kind of really, touches on stuff like that. Oh my god, Old Boy in particular. Holy crap. We'll cover Old Boy at some point. Don't you worry, people. The whole movie was cold. Even the HJ scene was cold and almost clinical. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the HJ scene for sure. Uncle Pete, 100%. I mean, it was kind of a business deal in a way. Literally, it was a business transaction. So it makes sense that would be very cold and clinical because it literally is let me get this thing done and then I can get the information I'm looking for. Marshall's agreeing. Oh, yeah. In the beginning of the film, I thought there was something nefarious about the meetings between Martin and Steven. That was off-putting from the start. Yeah, I agree with that. Also, the other thing is the uses of what music they used plus long stretches of silence made the whole thing just tense and unsettling the whole time. So I think it kind of created an atmosphere along with that weird dialogue that just made you feel weird about everyone and everything going on. So it just creates this atmosphere of just always feeling a little bit unsettled, a little bit on edge and suspicious of everything and everyone going on. So I think that kind of plays into what you're talking about there, Blue Room. I think they buried Bob in the backyard. That's where Steven said he would bury Marty. But it still leaves plot holes, like where did Bob go? Yeah. Yep. Like I was saying, Uncle Pete. How do you explain that? I don't, really can't. Although he's a doctor, so I would assume that he has some good contacts. Maybe enough people that would just trust whatever he says, whatever crap he makes up. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I definitely want to talk about with this film. I think we hit a lot of it. We hit a lot of stuff really quick. I really dug this film. I thought it was really interesting. Sorry for anyone who wasn't a big fan of it. To put it bluntly, I thought there was some type of sexual relationship between the two. Between Marty and Steve? Oh, you mean just initially you thought that? Yeah. I mean, the way they're meeting, it's very, very secretive. And Steve definitely is acting like, I'll talk to you for this little amount of time, but it's always on my terms. You have to wait here. Don't show up here. I'm only going to spend a certain amount of time with you. He had very strict boundaries. So yeah, I can see where you might think something like that. And yeah, it just sets it up to be very confusing and weird. And you're very much like, what is going on? And yeah, what is the relationship here? And then you learn. Also, probably the most WTF moment is when Steven said he gave his dad a HJ while he was drunk. That's a different type of horror. Yeah, that was a moment. Yeah, that was a crazy moment of film. But here's the thing, though. Do you think that was even realistic? Well, not realistic. Do you think that was true? Or do you think he was just kind of making something up to get Bob to tell him that this was all an act? Because that's what he was trying to do, is be like, I'll tell you a deep, dark secret. Although that's so weird and out there and messed up that I feel like it had to be true, right? Steven didn't help that by seemingly trying to hide the relationship. Yeah, Heather, totally. I mean, if he would have been, well, and that actually speaks to another thing. Why did he not go to the police at any point? You know what I mean? Like, he took everything into his own hands, and I feel like that's a plot hole with it. I feel like when he got to a certain point with what was going on with the kids being sick, being paralyzed from the legs down, or from the waist down, I feel like he would have gone to the police at some point. Like, at what point do you just lay everything bare and say, I need to save my kids, I need to save my family, I'm going to the authorities? Because the whole time he believed that Marty had something to do with this. And why would he just keep trying to just solve it himself and keep secrets? I assume it's because he wanted to keep the secret of what happened with or with Marty's father and him. But I mean, don't you care about your family? Maybe he doesn't. Well, I mean, in the beginning, he doesn't seem to. In the beginning, they were so secretive. Yes, very secretive. That part was too weird. It was weird. And there was the gifts, like the watch. I think Blue Room, the whole gifts thing, I understand what you're saying about why it made it look like there was a sexual relationship there, but I think the gifts were kind of all Steven knew as like a showing of trying to make things right or like show some sort of bond or connection. Because it seemed like he was actually trying to have some sort of relationship, quasi-fatherly relationship with Marty since he took his father off the planet, basically. And so I think him being a pretty cold clinical person, that's kind of all he knew was to like give material items, which I believe was probably what he was just doing with his kids. I think it was true since it fits the tone of the film. Yeah, it probably was true, Uncle Pete. Was there any significance with the leather watch band and the metal one? They focused on that in the beginning, or maybe it was nothing. Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't really think about that one, Uncle Pete. The leather watch band. I don't know. I feel like it would probably have something to do with showing some sort of, Marty breaking from Steven, because Steven's used to controlling his children, obviously, based on what you see early on with the family dynamics, just telling them what to do and they would usually do it. And I think Steven expects that maybe Marty would be like that, so maybe that's just a showing of Marty's going to do his own thing, and he has his own taste in the watches, basically. Like, oh, I like this band, but I think this band looks better. And Steven did seem to react to that in a weird way, to just be like, oh, like he doesn't like the fact that someone kind of second-guessed the gift, second-guessed his taste. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that. It was true. It had a double check that because it disturbed me so much. Yeah, Marshall, I hear you. Good question, Uncle Pete. Yeah, it was a good question. There was no physical evidence of any wrongdoing on Martin's part. What could the police do other than think that Steven was going crazy? Blue Room. Good point. But I would say that since Steven's in a status, he's a doctor, and people just naturally in society just think, oh, doctors, super smart, super stable, good people. So I would think that the police would probably believe him, at least to some degree, at least enough to look into it. Now, your point about there not really being any evidence, maybe that would play into it, and they would look into it and be like, we don't see anything here. We don't know that anything's going on. We can't prove anything. I think you probably have something there. Good theory on the watch band. Okay, thanks. I didn't know. I was just talking and I was just like, is this sounding like it makes sense? I don't know. Yeah, breaking the control. Yeah. That's my only thought initially when you asked the question, so I think it could go that way, but there could be some other stuff too. And this goes back to what you were saying is it warrants a rewatch. It definitely does. I don't think I had any other questions or things that I definitely wanted to talk about concerning this, but keep it coming if you guys have things. What was the significance with Steven's hands? Well, I think just because him being a surgeon, Marshall, there's a lot of focus on hands and people being people like him being good with their hands. I mean, that's his livelihood. Like, his hands are his livelihood. So really, that's a representation of him as a person and a representation of who he is job wise. So I think the focus on his hands was kind of saying that people just see him maybe as his profession and don't see him as who he is as an actual person, which I think would make sense also from the standpoint of how he interacts with his coworkers, because he's cold with his coworkers too, but they just treat it like it's normal, like, oh, this is who he is. And it seems like they just see him for the profession. Like, here's a prime example: the fact that when he's at that like gala event or whatever it was, and he tells that coworker about his daughter starting her period, which is definitely not something a normal person would do, tell that to their coworker. The way he reacts to it, the coworker, is very, like, he just kind of brushes it off, like it's just like, oh, that's okay, because obviously he's not abnormal. He's a surgeon. He's a very smart guy, very trustworthy. That's just how I kind of view it. For entertainment value, I give the film 1.5 heartbeats out of 5. Really? You hated it that much? Wow. Okay. But I see what you're saying, Blue Room. For the entertainment value, I get you. It is slow. It's my type of thing. I really like it, but yeah. So, I was going to propose an idea for the next film, because I just watched a film this morning that I already recorded a review for that I was very happy with. It is also an A24 horror movie, and it's on Netflix. So I was thinking I would throw that out there to be the next one. But for people like you, Blue Room, who aren't feeling it as much, what would you think about compromising on that and saying, let's do that film as our primary, and then we will also watch another film that is not as serious, not as, brooding and slow paced, and we'll just watch another one that's just more for fun and entertainment value, and then we'll talk about one, and then we'll talk about the other one, so we can just cover two. What say you all? Maybe they were all pod people from a sequel from the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I've seen the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's a good film. I mean, obviously you have to keep in context that, it's an old film, but for when it came out, I see why people were just like, oh man, this is awesome, because it's good. I dig it. Cool. Uncle Pete. Cool as in you're saying cool to my proposal of doing two films. I had to step away. What are the movies? I'm up for any movie, be them serious or full of humor. I like the idea of covering one film in depth and another one for fun. Okay, cool. So yeah, well, let's give it a shot. Let's do the in-depth analysis of the one that I saw this morning, and then we'll do a secondary one, which is just kind of for fun. So for the first one, let's go ahead and do The Black Coat's Daughter, which is on Netflix at the moment. Like I said, it's an A24 film. I will tell you, it is kind of slow. It is a lot about atmosphere. I was very much not understanding what was going on with the film, but you definitely will hit a point in the film where there's an aha moment, and you understand what's really going on, what it's all about. And I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was really well executed. And I'm very interested to see what you guys would think about it. Really, really interested in that, and what kind of questions and insight you might have for it. For the second film, what do you guys really want? I think a really good one might be Tammy and the T-Rex, which is still on Shudder right now. That could be a really good, fun one to just chat about. You're the boss. You point and I watch. Heather, I appreciate that. But I also, I'll also obviously take you guys' input. I mean, I can watch movies by myself whenever I want to. This is about a communal thing. We come together and have a good time and talk about these things. So yeah, just let me. I mean, if you guys feel best just saying you just pick them and we'll do them, I'm totally fine with that. I can do that. But if you guys want to throw out suggestions and you guys want to, say we'll do this or that, it's fine. What's the movie about? Blackcoat's Daughter, I assume. Um, I don't want to say too much about it, but girls at a boarding school and weird things happen. That's all. I think that's all I'll say about it. Um, I'd like Brain Damage for a fun one. I love Frankenhooker. Oh, sorry. I just filled that in as Frankenhooker because I actually have the movie Frankenhooker coming. But yes, you like Frank Henenlotter. I like Frank Henenlotter as well. I don't know if you saw I put up the review for Bad Biology last weekend. I don't really recommend that one. Tammy T Rex is a bit fluffy, but I can work with it. Well, I mean, what do you guys want? Do you want to do Brain Damage? I'm totally fine with doing Brain Damage. I've seen it a few times now. I dig that film. I could talk about that film for sure. But I could also do Tammy and the T-Rex. And, it's not to say that if we do one of these two next week that we won't do the other one the week after, or the 2 weeks after that. And not next week, in 2 weeks. So what do you guys want? Do you want to do Tammy and the T-Rex? Or do you want to do Brain Damage? Or are you guys thinking something else? I know we talked about the Collector as well. That's not as light, but whatever. If you want to do that, we do. Yeah, we could do it. So maybe just to make it easier, let's just do a vote. Vote Brain Damage or vote Tammy and the T-Rex. I see Uncle Pete's on for Brain Damage. I see Blue Room is on for Brain Damage. So that's 2. Who else is even here? That could be the end of the voting. No. The Suckling gets my vote. Okay, Blue Room, I do want to get to the Suckling. I really do. But is it available somewhere for streaming? That's my question. I mean, I have the Blu-ray, so I can watch it whenever, but I want to make sure that whatever we're going to pick, people can stream it, can find it somewhere, and don't have to go out and buy anything. But if it's streaming somewhere, we can definitely get to the Suckling for sure. But for now, I'd say let's just pick between Brain Damage and Tammy and the T-Rex. I'm fine with either one because I haven't seen them. Okay. And just so people know, Tammy and the T-Rex and Brain Damage are both available on Shudder. I'm sure potentially all of you already know that. I'm up for whatever. Are these being discussed on the same day? Yeah, I was just going to say we'll just do them in the same discussion. Like, we just basically came to the end of our discussion on Killing of a Sacred Deer. So that would be our discussion on the Blackcoat's Daughter. And then, like, right now we would just start talking about Brain Damage. It sounds like let's just go with Brain Damage because Heather and Marshall said they're cool with whatever, and Uncle Pete and Blue Room, you said Brain Damage. So let's do Brain Damage. Going to be the Blackcoat's Daughter. We'll talk about that first so we can get all the intellectual stuff out, and then we'll talk about Brain Damage. I think that sounds fun. I'm down with it. Oh, it's on Tubi. Okay. Got it, Blue Room. Noted. We will do the Suckling eventually. Maybe even not. Obviously, next one we're going to do Brain Damage, but maybe the next one after that we can do the Suckling, which I still have not watched. Like I said, I own it. I still haven't watched it yet, though. Okay, so I can give you the date and pull out my phone. So it will be Saturday the 20th of June, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As usual, we will talk about the Blackcoat's Daughter, which is streaming on Netflix, and then we will talk about Brain Damage, which is streaming on Shudder and potentially other stuff. I don't know. I hope you guys like The Black Coat's Daughter. It wasn't what I thought it would be. I will just tell you that much. And I'm not going to say in what way. But you'll get it when you watch it. Was the last driving on last night? Yes, Uncle Pete, it was. It was. The movies were, why am I blanking on it? Mayhem, which is a Shudder exclusive, which I like. I don't think it's like a phenomenal film or anything, but it's good. It was fun. And then the second one was Tetsuo, which I also own that movie but haven't watched it. That one's nuts from what I understand, and I still have to watch that one. I only stay up for the first Joe Bob movie because I get too tired, but I like that Carlin dropped the movies coming to Shudder in June, the same day HBO Max released. You're not the first person to comment on that. I thought it was interesting. It was totally by happenstance, by the way. Totally by happenstance. I didn't even, to be honest, know when HBO Max came out. Although, I always do the kind of teasers of what's coming the next month the day that I get the press release from Shudder. So it may have been a intentional thing on Shudder's part to release it the day HBO Max was coming out. Just saying. Which, by the way, if you have... I don't know what the difference, to be honest, between HBO Max and HBO Go is right now. I've had HBO Go. So I was just going to let you guys know. There's some good films on HBO Go right now if you have it. Such as Piranha. Joe Dante's original Piranha. I think that's fun. They have all the Jaws movies, which is great. I think Arachnophobia might still be on there. That's a great one. There's a lot of interesting things. Has anyone else watched The Black Coat's Daughter? I know Rich, who was in here, has not. I spoke to him today on the phone. He has not seen that. I don't get it. What's the connection to Shudder and HBO Max? I just assumed that it's Uncle Pete viewed as a competitive thing. I have the movie but haven't seen it yet. Blue Room, you have The Black Coat's Daughter? Because in that case, it would be interesting to know what the commentary track is like for that. It will be my first time watching The Black Coat's Daughter. Marshall, yeah. I hope you like it. I hope you like it. Because I was very pleasantly surprised with it. I felt like a lot of watching that film, at least for the first, 45 minutes to an hour, I was like, what is happening? Because I was trying to, get it straight, what was really going on. What was the ending going to be? What was the big secret? What was really happening here? And there was an aha moment, but for the longest time, I was just like, what is happening? Kept me guessing. Yeah, Streaming Wars. Mm-hmm. You've watched it twice, Heather. I think I might watch it again. HBO Max does have all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, so that's a W. Yeah, all the Nightmare on Elm Streets. So I wonder if I have HBO Go and I pay for HBO, I should be able to have HBO Max, correct? I don't know. I assume so. So what's the last movie you watched that was very disappointed in, or was surprised with? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to consult my phone because I always rate movies after I watch them through the DVD Netflix DVD site. So then I can go back and look and be like, oh, I watched that one, I didn't like it. I watched that one, I did like it. So let me see. I did watch. Oh, well, Bad Biology by Frank Henenlotter was probably the last movie I watched and was not happy with, and I wanted to really like it. Because I like Frank Henenlotter. Like, I really like Basket Case. I really like Frankenhooker. I really like Brain Damage. So I was like, I'm going to check out this bad biology film. I hadn't heard good things, but I was like, maybe people are just being a little too harsh on it. I don't really like it. There's stuff to like about it, but overall, no. I just watched Haunt and was pleasantly surprised that I liked it. Dude, Uncle Pete, Haunt is good. I did not expect much going into that film. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. I would recommend that to everyone. You'll have to sign up for HBO Max even if you have HBO Go. So what's the difference then? Like, I guess it's different films? Because, yeah, I know HBO Go doesn't have all the Nightmare on Elm Streets right now. And how much better is it? I don't know. I think you have to upgrade, Carlin. If you have HBO Go, it's kind of dumb. Yeah, that is kind of dumb. Do you guys have Letterboxd? I don't. We talked about Letterboxd last time, Marshall. Heather has it. And I actually looked into it, and Heather has a ridiculous amount of reviews on there. Like, I'm stunned. I was stunned when I looked at Heather's profile on there. I was just like, that's a lot of writing. So kudos to you, Heather. That is work. But it's a passion, it seems like. What else did I watch? Oh, Underwater. That was one I watched kind of recently and was just... I thought I had heard some good things, and I was like, okay, I'll check this out. I also really like underwater stuff. I hated it. I thought it was terrible. Color Out of Space, though, oh, my review already came out for that. I was going to say I have a review coming out. It already came out. Color Out of Space was a really good one recently that I watched. So... that's about it. Super recently. Yeah, no problem, Heather. No need to thank me. You're putting in work. I mean, I know that it's probably like a passion for you and it's a creativity thing, but people need to understand that with creativity, there's work involved with that. There, even though it's something you want to do and something you're driven to do and something that makes you feel good at the end of the day, it's not without its tougher moments, its more demanding moments, and like I said, it's work. There are definitely times where I'm doing the stuff with, my movie reviews on my YouTube channel that it feels like work. But overall, I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and I like it. By the way, just to throw this out there, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I had my Tremors review come out 2 Sundays ago. Then I had a review for Tremors come out last Sunday, Tremors 2, and then Tremors 3 is coming out tomorrow, and it's going to continue like that. So then it'll be Tremors 4, 5, 6, because I did all of them. And then I'm almost halfway through the TV show that was on Sci-Fi in 2003, so I'm then going to have a review up on one of the Sundays for the Tremors TV show. So, just a preview of what's coming. Other than that, other than all those Tremors things, The Black Coat's Daughter is the only other review I've recorded, but I have notes done up for Dogtooth, that other Yorgos Lanthimos film, which is on Shudder right now. And what was the other one? Oh yeah, The Lodge, which just hit Hulu right now, and I've heard really good things about The Lodge. So I will be doing that one. That's coming up. And then I know there's some more Shudder exclusives and originals coming up soon this month that I'll get screeners for, and I'll do those. The only one I remember at the moment is Scare Packages, which is like a horror comedy, and I've heard really good things about, so I'm really hoping it's good. Heather, yes, it was a lot of work, but I mostly enjoyed doing it. And that's key, Heather. When it gets to a point where it just feels like work, it's just not worth doing anymore. So I'm glad that, you're still enjoying that. Thank you, Uncle Pete. I appreciate that. I mean, I know there are plenty of people out there who put even more work into their videos for it. for movie reviews, like slicing in some video portions and graphics and stuff like that. But I just don't have the time for that. And I feel like if I even did do that, that I would not enjoy it enough to keep doing it. But to anyone who has not watched Haunt, please do so. It's very good. I'll co-sign that, Uncle Pete. I agree. I recommend Haunt. It's definitely worth watching. I think there's one moment in it in particular where you're just like, and it's just kind of like, yeah, it's like the big reveal in the film. It's good. Next movie I'm excited to see Colin Farrell is the Batman next year. What? Is that Colin Farrell's Batman next year? What happened to Robert Pattinson? Are you pulling my chain, Marshall? Sorry for that noise. And then if you guys have anything else that you want to talk about, horror film or otherwise related right now, let's just chat it up. Otherwise, if you guys feel like you're kind of done with everything, we can cut it off. It's up to you guys. Up to you guys. I kind of budget for up to 2 hours, but if we don't have anything else that we're really feeling like talking about, we can be done. It's up to you. He's going to be the Penguin? Colin Farrell as the Penguin. I don't know. I have a hard time visualizing that just because I'm so used to the Danny DeVito Penguin, which was awesome. Yeah. How are they going to do Colin Farrell? I guess he's going to be a slim Penguin, unless they're going to do like make him larger with like a fat suit or something. Interesting. I mean, he's a great actor, though. Movie I was surprised I ended up liking is one called Mutant Blast. A trauma movie. As soon as I read Mutant Blast, I was like, that sounds like a trauma film. That's funny. Which I have never been big into. Yeah, I haven't been huge into trauma, but okay. Mutant Blast. Thank you for that recommendation, Heather. I'll have to try and check that one out. Heather, since you like found footage movies, have you seen Creep or has anyone else seen it? Marshall, I have seen the first Creep. I liked it enough. I haven't seen the second one, though. Yes, I have watched Creep and Creep 2. Okay. Heather did them both. Oh, okay. He is going to wear a fat suit. Okay, that helps. Marshall, I think that helps greatly because, yeah, you can't have a skinny penguin. I mean, you could, but it just wouldn't feel right. Uncle Pete, like you said, Heather, I'm only a fan of Toxie #1 from Troma, but they surprised me with Troma's War. Yeah, Troma's War was pretty fun and funny. It had enough good comedy moments. The moment where the guy in the tree with the machine gun farts. I know it's such a stupid, base joke, but that was the funniest part of the movie for me. Just saw those movies, Heather. I really enjoyed them. I'm excited for the third one. Holy crap. Marshall, there's a third Creep? Wow. Well, I guess I got to get caught up. I got to watch the second one. Creep made me jump out of my skin at the very end. Yeah. It did have some good jump scares. Awesome movie. #2 is not as good as the first. Yeah, I assume the second one wouldn't be as good. The first one was the better one. I mean, that's usually how it is. There's some rare occasions where I think the second film is better, like Hellraiser 2, I think, is potentially better than 1. I keep going back and forth on those. Phantasm 2, I think, is better than the first one. Although I love them both. I love them all. I even like Phantasm Ravager. Yes, I like Phantasm Ravager. Marty's kind of similar to Joseph in Creep because they're both creeps. Yeah. Good point, Marshall. Good point. I will tell you this, guys. Through watching. I was never huge on Tremors. I had seen the first Tremors film, but going so deep into it, there's a charm there that carries through all the films. And I feel like I got sucked in. So much so that I ordered a t-shirt through Fright Rags with graboids on it. So I will have a Tremor shirt coming up. Hopefully I'll remember I can wear it for one of the live streams. It's orange. I don't usually wear orange. I usually wear black. But I saw it and I was just like, I'm going to do a different color. Let's try something new. Plus it was the best looking one of what they had available in my size. All right. So it seems like we're kind of good, running out of things to talk about. So let's go ahead and just cut it off there. Like I said, we're gonna go ahead and in 2 weekends, in 2 Saturdays, the 20th of June, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Still, we're gonna do the Black Coat's Daughter, which is available on Netflix, and then Brain Damage, which is available on Shudder. And for people who don't know, or for people who have Shudder but don't know, which I don't know if that's you guys at all, any of you guys. Brain Damage is on there as just Brain Damage. It is also on there as getting a treatment from Joe Bob Briggs for The Last Drive-In. So feel free to watch it either way you want. It's fun either way, in my opinion. Where would you rank the Tall Man as a villain, as a horror villain? Marshall? I don't think he's the best villain. I put him top 10, though. I think he's better than Chucky, in my opinion. I like him more than Chucky. I don't like him as much as Pinhead. I don't like him as much as Freddy Krueger. I like the films. I would say overall I like the Phantasm films more than the Nightmare on Elm Street films. But when you're just looking at the villain itself, I think Freddy Krueger's better than the Tall Man. He's in the top 10 for sure. Yeah. Yeah, Uncle Pete. Top 10. Totally agree. I mean, he might even be like top 5 for me, to be honest. But yeah, he's not going to beat Pinhead. Pinhead's my number 1 villains. Freddy Krueger is number 2 probably. Jason Voorhees has got to be up in there. I don't know if he's top 5 or not. I'd have to really like sit down, rewatch a bunch of movies, really think about it though. He's way better than Ghostface. Yeah. Well, I mean, the other aspect of it is Ghostface is human. And, well, I mean, I guess it comes down to preference, but I prefer the ones that are supernatural. I just think it's more interesting and fun. I put Chud over Ghostface. And Chud's like multiples. Yeah, good night, Blue Room. Good night, man. Oh my god. Heather, you got to meet Angus Scrim. Oh. Wish I could have. I really wish I could have. I've met Reggie Bannister. He's awesome. I really want to meet Don Coscarelli. Number 1 will always be Leatherface. Yeah, Leatherface is good, man. Definitely good. Michael Myers, Jason, Leatherface, Chucky, Pinhead, Pennywise. Ooh, yeah, Pennywise. Pennywise is a great one. Yeah, he's probably top 5. Number 1, Michael Myers. Yeah. He wouldn't be for me, but I could see where people would. Yeah, definitely. It's legitimate. All right. Well, we'll pick this stuff up next. Sorry, I keep wanting to say next weekend. We'll pick this stuff up in 2 weekends. Blackcoat's Daughter, Brain Damage. We'll do it up. All right, you guys. Thank you very much, as usual, for showing up for this. I really do appreciate it. I think we had an awesome discussion on the killing of a sacred deer. Thank you guys for indulging me on that one, watching it, and really participating in this. I think everyone had some really good stuff to say, and I'm very happy. I think this has been the best discussion thus far. Followed by, I think, The Cabin in the Woods. Chop. Oh, Chop Top. Yeah, Bill Moseley. Wait, Blue Room, you stayed 2 nights at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre gas station? That's cool. All right. Yep. Signing off. Sorry. I keep getting sucked back in. But yeah, take it easy. Have a good night, everyone. Yes, keep it brutal. Thank you so much for everyone showing up. Have a good night.